The morning Jake Martinez woke up to screaming, he figured it was just another crazy Tuesday in downtown Detroit. Turned out, it was way worse than that. He rolled out of bed around 6:30, scratching his head and yawning like he'd been hit by a freight train. The screaming outside his apartment window wasn't the usual kind though, not the angry neighbor stuff or the street argument nonsense. This was pure terror, the kind that makes your blood run cold even before your brain catches up to what's happening. Jake stumbled to the window, pushed aside the beat-up blinds, and that's when he saw Mrs. Patterson from 3B literally eating Mr. Gonzalez the mailman. Not like, eating his lunch or whatever. Actually eating the dude. Holy crap, Jake muttered, his brain short-circuiting as he watched the impossible scene play out 3 stories below. Mrs. Patterson, the sweet old lady who always had butterscotch candies and cat stories, was crouched over the mailman like some kind of animal, her mouth covered in red, her movements all jerky and wrong. Mr. Gonzalez wasn't moving anymore, which was probably for the best considering the circumstances. Jake's hands started shaking as he grabbed his phone, but the screen showed nothing but error messages. No service, no internet, no nothing. The TV in his living room was stuck on the emergency broadcast system, that annoying tone blaring over and over with a message telling everyone to stay inside and await further instructions. Further instructions, Jake said to his empty apartment. Yeah, sure, I'll just wait here while grandmas are munching on the mailman. Great plan. He wasn't usually the sarcastic type, but extreme situations brought out different sides of people. His military training from his 4 years in the army kicked in pretty quick though, the initial shock wearing off as survival instincts took over. He moved away from the window, started pulling on jeans and a hoodie, his mind racing through possibilities. Some kind of attack, maybe biological warfare, or one of those diseases the news was always freaking out about. Didn't really matter what caused it, what mattered was getting somewhere safe. Jake's apartment was small, a typical bachelor pad with minimal furniture and even less food. He grabbed his bug-out bag from the closet, something he'd kept packed since leaving the service, even though his buddies had called him paranoid. Who's paranoid now, he thought, checking the contents. Water bottles, protein bars, first aid kit, flashlight, batteries, multi-tool. His dad's old hunting knife was in the bottom drawer, and he strapped that to his belt. No firearms though, he'd sold his pistol 6 months back when money got tight after losing his job at the auto plant. That decision was coming back to bite him now. The hallway outside his apartment was chaos. His neighbor Travis, a college kid who threw loud parties and smoked way too much weed, was frantically pounding on doors, his face pale as a ghost. Dude, we gotta go, man. They're coming up the stairs. Those things are everywhere. Travis was practically hyperventilating, his eyes wild with panic. Jake grabbed his shoulder, steadied him. Yo, Travis, breathe man. Who's coming up? But he already knew the answer when he heard the sounds echoing up the stairwell, that weird groaning noise that didn't sound human anymore, and the shuffle of dozens of feet. The roof, Jake said quickly, his tactical mind running through options. Fire escape's gonna be swarmed, front entrance is obviously toast. We go up, figure it out from there. Travis nodded like a bobblehead, just grateful someone was making decisions. They booked it down the hallway toward the roof access, and that's when they ran into Monica Richardson and her kid brother, Marcus. Monica was maybe 25, worked as a nurse at Detroit Mercy, still wearing her scrubs from what must have been one hell of a night shift. Marcus was 13, skinny kid with braces, clutching a baseball bat like his life depended on it. Which, fair enough, it probably did. The hospital's gone, Monica said, her voice steady but her eyes telling a different story. She'd seen some stuff, that much was clear. It happened so fast. Patients started coding, then getting back up, attacking people. Security couldn't stop them. I grabbed Marcus from school on the way home and everything just fell apart. Her hands had blood on them, and Jake didn't ask if it was hers. We're heading up, he told her. You coming? Monica looked at Marcus, then back at Jake, and nodded. Yeah, we're coming. The four of them hit the roof just as the stairwell door on the third floor gave way, the sounds of the dead pouring into the building making everyone move faster. The roof was flat, covered in gravel and old HVAC units, with a decent view of the city burning in the distance. Smoke rose from a dozen different spots, and the sounds of car alarms, screams, and gunfire created this insane symphony of the world ending. So what's the play? Travis asked, his voice cracking a bit. Jake scanned the surrounding buildings, his military experience running calculations. The next building over was only about 6 feet away, maybe 7. Jumpable, if you weren't a coward about it. We jump, Jake said, pointing. That building connects to the old factory complex. From there we can get to the industrial district, find somewhere to hole up that's more defensible than this place. Monica looked at the gap between buildings, then at Marcus. He's 13, she said quietly. I don't know if he can make that. Jake understood her concern, he really did, but the groaning from the stairwell was getting louder, and he could see the door starting to shake. He's gonna have to, Jake said, not unkindly. We all are. It's that or wait here and see how friendly those things are feeling. Marcus stepped forward, trying to look braver than he felt. I can do it, he said, his voice barely steady. I run track at school. I got this. Monica's face showed she was torn up inside, but she nodded, squeezing her brother's shoulder. Jake went first, taking a running start and clearing the gap easy enough, landing in a roll on the other side. He popped up, brushed off the gravel. Nothing to it, he called back. Just don't look down and don't think about it too hard. Travis went next, screaming the whole way across like he was on a roller coaster, but he made it, landing hard and probably bruising his shoulder but alive. Monica made Marcus go before her, standing at the edge and coaching him through it. You've got this, baby brother. Just like long jump in gym class, okay? I'm right behind you. Marcus backed up, took 3 deep breaths, and ran. For a second, as he launched himself across the gap, time seemed to stop, and Jake's heart was in his throat thinking the kid wasn't gonna make it. But Marcus cleared it, just barely, landing on the edge and scrambling forward. Jake grabbed him, pulled him to safety. Told you, Marcus said, trying to grin through the terror. Monica came last, and she made it look easy, her nurse's shoes hitting the gravel with barely a sound. They didn't have time to celebrate because the roof they just left was filling up with the dead, at least a dozen of them stumbling out of the stairwell access. Some of them saw the survivors on the next building over and started moving toward the edge, and Jake really hoped they were too stupid to figure out jumping. Most of them were, just kind of bumping into the low wall around the roof's perimeter. But one of them, a business dude in a torn suit, actually tried to follow. He didn't make it, falling into the alley below with a crunch that made Travis look like he might puke. They're not completely mindless, Monica observed, her nurse's analytical side showing. That one attempted problem solving, even if it failed. We need to remember they might be more dangerous than typical movie zombies. Jake filed that information away as they headed for the stairwell of their new building. This one was older, probably built in the 50s, and the door to the roof was already open, which was either really good or really bad. Jake went in first, knife drawn, moving quiet down the concrete steps. The building was dark, emergency lights barely working, and it smelled like mold and old industrial chemicals. They made it down 2 floors before running into trouble. A group of those things was clustered around what looked like a makeshift shelter someone had tried to set up, sleeping bags and canned food scattered everywhere. The survivors who'd been here were gone now, either dead or walking dead, hard to tell which. There were 5 of the zombies, all of them turning toward the sound of footsteps with that creepy synchronized movement. Back up slow, Jake whispered, but Travis panicked and knocked over a metal shelf, the crash echoing through the whole building like a dinner bell. Run! Jake shouted, all stealth gone now, and they booked it down the stairs, taking them 2 and 3 at a time. The zombies followed, moving faster than Jake expected, not quite running but definitely not shambling either. They poured into the stairwell with that awful groaning sound, and Marcus tripped on the landing between the 4th and 3rd floors, going down hard. Monica screamed, reaching for him, but Jake was already moving, scooping the kid up by his arm and practically throwing him forward. Move, move, move. They burst out of the stairwell on the ground floor, finding themselves in what used to be a garment factory, old sewing stations and fabric rolls everywhere. The front windows were broken out, glass covering the floor, and the street beyond looked like a war zone. Abandoned cars, bodies, fires burning unchecked. But there was also a delivery truck parked halfway up on the sidewalk, engine still running, driver's door open. Someone had bailed in a hurry. There! Jake pointed, and they ran for it, feet crunching on glass and debris. Jake got to the truck first, checking the cab. Empty, keys in the ignition, gas tank showing 3/4 full. Everybody in, he yelled, and they piled into the truck, Marcus and Travis in the back cargo area, Monica riding shotgun. Jake threw it in drive and punched the gas just as a crowd of zombies rounded the corner, at least 30 of them drawn by the noise and movement. The truck plowed through a few of them, and Jake tried not to think about the bumps and thuds as he swerved around abandoned vehicles and debris. Where are we going? Monica asked, bracing herself against the dashboard as Jake took a corner too fast. Away from here, Jake said, his jaw tight. Out of the city if we can manage it. Cities are gonna be death traps with this many people turned into those things. He'd seen enough combat overseas to know that urban environments became nightmares real quick when things went sideways. Too many places for enemies to hide, too many civilians in the crossfire, too many complications. Open ground was better, easier to see threats coming. But getting out of Detroit was easier said than done. The highways were completely gridlocked, cars abandoned bumper to bumper, some of them still containing the remains of their drivers. Jake had to take side streets and alleyways, navigating by instinct and his decent knowledge of the city's layout. They passed scenes of chaos and horror, groups of survivors fighting off the dead with whatever they had, buildings burning, bodies everywhere. Every time they stopped for more than a few seconds, zombies would start converging on the truck, drawn by the engine noise. Gas station ahead, Travis called from the back, pointing through the small window that connected the cargo area to the cab. We should grab supplies while we can. Jake wanted to argue, wanted to just keep driving until they hit countryside, but the kid had a point. They needed more than the protein bars in his bug-out bag if they were gonna survive long-term. He pulled into a quick stop that looked relatively intact, the windows still whole, no obvious signs of the dead inside. Quick in and out, he said, killing the engine. Grab food, water, medical supplies, anything useful. 2 minutes max. They moved as a unit, Jake leading the way with his knife, Monica right behind him, Marcus sticking close to his sister, and Travis bringing up the rear with a tire iron he'd found in the truck. The gas station was weirdly quiet, the automatic doors broken open but the inside looking mostly untouched. The cashier was gone, the register standing open and empty. Spread out, grab what you can carry, Jake instructed, moving toward the back where the coolers were. He started loading up on water bottles, sports drinks, anything with electrolytes. Monica hit the first aid section, her nurse training making her efficient as she grabbed bandages, antiseptic, pain meds, everything she could stuff into a plastic bag. Marcus was in the snack aisle, loading up on chips and candy bars, teenager priorities even during the apocalypse. Travis was grabbing beef jerky and energy drinks when they heard the sound, that low groaning coming from the back office. We got company, Jake said quietly, setting down his water haul and gripping his knife. Everyone to the truck, now. But before they could move, a zombie burst out of the back office, moving fast. It was wearing a quick-stop uniform, name tag reading Brandon, and it went straight for Travis, who was closest. Travis screamed, swinging the tire iron wild, catching the zombie in the shoulder but not stopping it. Jake crossed the distance in 2 seconds, grabbing the zombie from behind and plunging his knife into the base of its skull, the way he'd been trained to take out sentries silently. The thing dropped like a puppet with cut strings, and Jake pulled his blade free, trying not to think about how that used to be a person. "Time to go," he said, his voice rough. They grabbed what they could and booked it back to the truck, piling in with their supplies. Jake got them moving again, his hands shaking slightly on the wheel from the adrenaline dump. That was the first one he'd killed up close, and it hit different than watching Mrs. Patterson from 3 stories up. Monica noticed his hands, reached over and squeezed his shoulder briefly. "You did good," she said quietly. "You saved Travis." Jake just nodded, focusing on the road. They drove for another hour, working their way through the urban sprawl, until the buildings started spacing out and residential areas gave way to industrial parks and farmland. The sun was getting low, painting everything in orange and red, and Jake knew they needed to find shelter before dark. Driving at night was gonna be sketchy, and they were all exhausted, running on adrenaline and fear. A billboard ahead advertised a storage facility, secure space self-storage, 2 miles ahead, and Jake made a decision. "Storage facility," he said. "Fenced in, individual units we can secure, probably not many people there when this all went down." Monica considered it. Better than being out in the open or trapped in a building with multiple access points. They found the facility right where the billboard promised, a sprawling complex of orange metal storage units surrounded by a 10-foot chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. The gate was closed but not locked, the attendant booth empty. Jake drove through slowly, scanning for threats. The place seemed deserted, which made sense. Who'd be at a storage facility when the world ended? They found a unit near the back, one of the larger ones, and Jake used bolt cutters from the truck's toolbox to cut off the existing lock. Inside was pretty empty, just some old furniture covered in tarps and boxes of Christmas decorations. "It's not the Ritz," Jake said, pulling the truck inside the unit, "but it'll keep us hidden and safe for the night." They pulled the rolling door down most of the way, leaving just enough gap for air circulation. They sat in a circle on the concrete floor, sharing warm sports drinks and gas station food, their first chance to really breathe since this morning. "So," Travis said, his mouth full of Doritos, "is anyone gonna say it? Like, actual zombies, man. Dead people walking around eating the living. This is insane." Marcus laughed, a slightly hysterical edge to it. "I had a math test today. I was worried about a math test. That's what I was stressing about this morning." Monica pulled him close, kissed the top of his head. "That math test is definitely canceled, baby brother." "My phone's completely dead," Travis continued, scrolling through his useless device. "No service, no internet, nothing. How does the whole network just go down like that?" Monica had theories about that. If this spread as fast as it seemed to at the hospital, infrastructure would collapse almost immediately. Power plant workers, cell tower technicians, emergency services, all either dead or turned. Without people to maintain the systems, everything fails. It was a grim picture, the whole modern world grinding to a halt in less than a day. Jake was quiet, his military mind working through scenarios. "We need a long-term plan," he finally said. "This storage unit is fine for tonight, maybe tomorrow, but we need somewhere more permanent. Somewhere we can grow food, collect rainwater, defend properly." He'd been thinking about this since they left the city, running through everything he'd learned in survival training. Rural farmhouse, maybe, or a small town that we can wall off. Somewhere away from major population centers. "My uncle has a farm," Marcus offered, sitting up straighter. "Up north, near Traverse City. Like, a real farm with crops and animals and everything. He's kind of a prepper weirdo, always talking about end-of-the-world stuff at Thanksgiving. He's got supplies and weapons and all kinds of stuff." Monica nodded, confirming it. Marcus is right. "My uncle, our uncle, Jack Richardson. He's got a 100-acre farm, pretty isolated, his own well for water, solar panels, the whole 9 yards. If anywhere is gonna be safe, it's there. Jake felt hope flicker for the first time all day. That's like, what, 250 miles from here? 300? He tried to remember Michigan geography. It's a trek, but in the truck we could make it in maybe 5 or 6 hours if the roads are clear. Big if, though. Travis was already on board. Dude, prepper farm sounds way better than hiding in a storage unit eating gas station snacks. I say we go for it. They all looked at each other, these 4 random people thrown together by circumstance, and there was this unspoken agreement forming. They were a team now, a unit, whether they'd chosen it or not. We leave at first light, Jake decided. Get some rest while we can, take shifts keeping watch in case any of those things wander by. I'll take first watch, then Monica, then Travis. Marcus, you get to sleep through, you're the youngest. Marcus looked like he might argue about being babied, but a yawn caught him mid-breath, and he just nodded. They arranged the furniture tarps into makeshift bedding, and despite the concrete floor and the stress of the day, exhaustion pulled most of them under pretty quick. Jake sat near the partially raised door, his knife within easy reach, watching the dark shapes of storage units and the fence line beyond. The night was weirdly quiet, none of the usual city sounds, just the occasional distant scream or gunshot reminding him the world had fundamentally changed. He thought about his family, his mom down in Florida, his sister in California. Were they dealing with this too? Was it everywhere, or just Detroit? The emergency broadcast had said global event, but that seemed impossible, too big to wrap his head around. His watch shift passed without incident, and he woke Monica gently around midnight. She took his spot by the door, looking surprisingly alert for someone running on maybe 2 hours of sleep. You military? She asked quietly as he started to head for his tarp bed. Jake paused. Army, for years, deployed twice to Afghanistan. Got out about 3 years ago. You? Monica smiled slightly. Just a nurse, but night shifts in Detroit teach you to function without sleep. And how to stay calm when everything's going crazy. Good skills for the apocalypse, Jake said, matching her slight smile. That thing you said earlier, about them problem solving, that was smart. Observant. We're gonna need that. Monica's expression turned more serious. I'm terrified, you know. For Marcus, mostly. He's just a kid, he should be worried about girls and video games, not whether he's gonna get eaten by zombies. But I'm glad we ran into you. Military training is definitely gonna help keep us alive. Jake felt the weight of that responsibility settle on his shoulders. These people were counting on him, looking to him for leadership. Better not screw it up. He slept fitfully, his dreams full of Mrs. Patterson's blood-covered face and the sound of Mr. Gonzalez screaming. He jerked awake during Travis's watch shift, his heart pounding, reaching for his knife before he remembered where he was. Travis gave him a sympathetic look from across the unit. Rough dreams, huh? Yeah, me too when I crashed earlier. Keep seeing those things chasing us down the stairs. They shared a look of understanding, 2 guys processing trauma in real time. Dawn came slowly, gray light filtering under the storage unit door. They ate a cold breakfast of protein bars and warm energy drinks, packed up their supplies, and prepared to move out. Jake raised the door carefully, checking for threats before pulling the truck out. The storage facility was still quiet, no signs of the dead, which was a small mercy. They loaded up, Jake behind the wheel again, and headed for the exit. The road north was a nightmare of abandoned vehicles and wandering zombies. Jake had to drive off-road more than once, the truck bouncing through ditches and fields to get around traffic jams. Every town they passed through was a scene of devastation, buildings burned out, bodies in the streets, the few living people they saw either hostile or too terrified to ask for help. They couldn't save everyone, Jake had to keep reminding himself of that. They had limited supplies, limited space, and a destination in mind. Stopping for every survivor they saw would get them killed. But around noon, about halfway to Traverse City, they came across a situation they couldn't ignore. A small group of survivors was pinned down in a gas station, surrounded by maybe 40 zombies, the dead trying to break through the glass doors and windows. Jake could see people inside, one of them a little kid, maybe 5 years old, pressed against the glass with terror on her face. "We have to help them," Monica said, her voice tight. Marcus was leaning forward between the seats, seeing the little girl. "We can't just leave them." Jake's tactical mind was screaming that this was a bad idea, that they should keep driving, that they couldn't risk themselves for strangers. But his human side, the part that had joined the army to protect people, couldn't just drive past a kid in trouble. "All right," he said, his jaw tight. "Here's the play. I'm gonna use the truck to draw the zombies away from the entrance. When they follow me, you guys get those people into the truck's cargo area fast as possible, then I circle back and we get out of here. Everyone clear?" They all nodded, even though the plan was risky as hell. Jake laid on the horn, the sound blaring across the gas station parking lot, and every zombie head turned toward the truck in creepy unison. He revved the engine, drew them away from the entrance, leading them in a circle around the parking lot like some demented parade. Monica jumped out while they were moving, hit the ground running, Travis right behind her with Marcus bringing up the rear. They got to the gas station doors and started pounding, yelling for the people inside to open up. The survivors inside hesitated, probably thinking it was a trick or too scared to trust anyone, but the sight of Monica, clearly a nurse in her scrubs, seemed to convince them. They unlocked the doors and people poured out, 7 of them total. The little girl, her mom, 3 college-age kids, and an older couple. They ran for the truck while Jake kept the zombie horde distracted, circling wider to give them time. Monica got everyone loaded into the cargo area, then banged on the cab. "We're good, go go go." Jake punched it, the truck lurching forward, plowing through a few zombies that got in the way. He could hear people screaming in the back, the ride rough as he took the truck off the parking lot and onto the highway access road. Once they were clear and the zombies were falling behind, he slowed to a less terrifying speed, his heart hammering in his chest. "Everyone okay back there?" he called through the divider window. Monica's face appeared. Shaken up but alive. "That was insane, Jake." They pulled over a few miles down the road to do proper introductions and assess their new passengers. The mom with the little girl was Jennifer Torres, the kid was Sophie, both of them looking shell-shocked but uninjured. The college kids were roommates, Emma Walsh, Dylan Cooper, and Aiden Foster, all from Michigan State, trying to get home when everything went crazy. The older couple was Harold and Betty Mitchell, married 50 years, retired teachers from Grand Rapids. They all looked at Jake like he was some kind of hero, which made him uncomfortable. "We're heading to a farm up near Traverse City," Jake explained. "It's supposed to be set up for this kind of situation, defensible, sustainable. You're welcome to come with us, but you need to know it's gonna be dangerous getting there, and there's no guarantee it'll be what we hope." Everyone agreed immediately, no hesitation. They'd all seen enough in the last 24 hours to know that being alone meant death. Safety in numbers, even with strangers. The truck was crowded now, 11 people total, but they made it work. Sophie sat on her mom's lap, the college kids squeezed together, Harold and Betty holding hands like they'd done for 5 decades. The atmosphere was tense but not hopeless, people sharing stories of how they'd survived the initial outbreak, what they'd lost, who they were hoping to find. Emma had lost her whole family in the first hours, her voice breaking as she talked about her little brother. Dylan was trying to be strong, but Jake could see the kid was barely holding it together. Aiden was quiet, his eyes distant, probably processing trauma. They drove through the afternoon, the landscape getting more rural, trees replacing buildings, open fields stretching out on both sides of the highway. The number of zombies decreased the further they got from population centers, which was a relief. They passed through small towns that looked like everyone had either evacuated or turned, main streets empty of life, just the shuffling dead wandering aimlessly. Jake didn't stop, didn't slow down unless he absolutely had to. Around 4 in the afternoon, still about 50 miles from Traverse City, the truck started making a bad noise, a grinding sound from the engine that Jake recognized as serious trouble. "Come on, "Baby, don't do this now," he muttered, but the truck had other ideas. Smoke started pouring from under the hood, and the temperature gauge spiked into the red. He pulled over on a rural stretch of highway, surrounded by farmland and woods, and popped the hood. The radiator was cracked, probably from when he'd plowed through zombies earlier, leaking coolant everywhere. "Can we fix it?" Monica asked, coming around to look at the damage. Jake shook his head. "Not without parts we don't have and tools we don't have. We're walking from here." A groan went through the group. 50 miles was a long way on foot, especially with a 5-year-old and 2 senior citizens. But there wasn't much choice. They gathered all the supplies they could carry, redistributing the load so everyone had a manageable pack, even Sophie carrying a small backpack with snacks. "We find vehicles along the way, we take them," Jake said, his tactical mind adjusting the plan. "But we keep moving no matter what. Staying in one place too long is how you die." They started walking, a ragged line of survivors on an empty highway, the afternoon sun beating down. Harold and Betty were troopers, keeping pace better than Jake expected, their years of hiking and staying active paying off. Sophie rode on Travis's shoulders for a while, then on Dylan's, the guys trading off to give each other breaks. As evening approached, they spotted a farmhouse set back from the road, a long gravel driveway leading up to a 2-story white house with a barn and some outbuildings. Shelter for the night, Jake decided. "We check it out. Clear it, set up defensively." They approached carefully, but the farm seemed abandoned, no signs of life or unlife. The front door was unlocked, the inside dusty like no one had been there in a while. Maybe the owners had evacuated early, or maybe they'd never made it home when things went bad. They cleared the house room by room, Jake leading the way with his knife, finding nothing but old furniture and family photos showing happy times that seemed like ancient history now. The barn had an old pickup truck in it, but the battery was dead and the tires were flat. Still, it was defensible, and there was a working water pump in the kitchen that pulled from a well. They could rest here, actually rest, for the first time since leaving Detroit. Monica organized a proper meal with supplies they'd scavenged, heating up canned soup on a camp stove Emma had been carrying. They sat around the farmhouse kitchen table, all 11 of them squeezing in, and for a moment it almost felt normal. People talking quietly, sharing food, Sophie even laughing at a joke Aiden told. These small moments of humanity mattered, Jake was learning. They were what you fought to protect, what made survival worth the effort. That night they set up a proper watch rotation, 2 people at a time, Jake not willing to risk being caught off guard. He took the midnight shift with Emma, the 2 of them sitting on the farmhouse porch, watching the dark fields and the stars overhead. "You ever think the world could end like this?" Emma asked softly. "Like, just one day everything's normal, and the next day there's zombies and everything you knew is gone?" Jake considered the question. "Military trains you to expect the unexpected, but no, not like this. This is beyond anything I imagined." "My brother wanted to be a soldier," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was 17, planning to enlist after graduation. He never got the chance. They got him in our house, in his own bedroom. I heard him screaming but I couldn't get to him, there were too many of them." Jake heard the guilt and grief in her voice, recognized it from his own experiences with lost friends. "You survived," he said simply. "That's what he would want. You keep surviving, you honor his memory. That's all any of us can do for the ones we lost." The night passed quietly, and they set out again at dawn, leaving the farmhouse behind. The landscape was beautiful in the morning light, rolling hills and forests painted in green and gold, birds singing like the world hadn't ended. It was surreal, this contrast between nature's indifference and humanity's collapse. They walked for hours, stopping occasionally to rest and hydrate, Marcus and Sophie becoming buddies, the kid telling her stories to keep her spirits up. Around mid-morning they came across a small town, couldn't have been more than a few hundred people before the outbreak. Now it was a graveyard, bodies in the streets, windows broken, several buildings burned to foundations. But there was also a sheriff's station, and where there was law enforcement, there were usually vehicles. Jake led a team to check it out while the others waited in cover at the edge of town. The station had been overrun, zombies still wandering inside, but there was a police SUV parked out back, keys hanging on a board in the office. They cleared the building quietly, Jake and Dylan working together to take down the 6 zombies inside with minimal noise, knives and a crowbar doing grim work. They grabbed the keys, checked the SUV, found it gassed up and ready to go, probably prepared for a patrol that never happened. They also found weapons, a shotgun and 2 pistols with ammunition, secured in a locker that had been pried open. Jake took the shotgun, gave the pistols to Monica and Travis, figured the nurse and the college kid could handle basic firearms with a quick safety lesson. They loaded everyone into and onto the police SUV, people crammed inside and a few riding on the roof rack holding on for dear life, and made better time covering the remaining distance to Uncle Jack's farm. The GPS was useless without satellites, but Monica remembered the way from family visits, directing Jake through back roads and county highways. The closer they got to Traverse City, the more hopeful they became, imagining this promised land of safety and supplies. Uncle Jack's farm was another 20 miles past Traverse City, down a rural route that barely qualified as a road. They found it in the late afternoon, a sign reading Richardson Family Farm EST 1967 marking the turnoff. The property was impressive, a big main house, multiple barns and outbuildings, fields of crops, fenced pastures with actual cows and chickens visible. And surrounding the whole central compound was a newly constructed chain-link fence topped with barbed wire, with what looked like reinforced gates. He actually did it, Monica breathed. The crazy old man actually built a fortress farm. They approached the main gate slowly, Jake honking the horn in a pattern Monica said was a family signal. For a long moment nothing happened, and Jake felt worry creeping in. What if Uncle Jack was gone, dead or turned? What if all this hope had been for nothing? But then a figure appeared on the porch of the main house, binoculars raised, and a moment later the gate started rolling open. Uncle Jack Richardson was exactly what Jake pictured when someone said prepper farmer. 60s, weathered face, beard going gray, wearing overalls and carrying a rifle like it was an extension of his arm. He broke into a huge grin when he recognized Monica and Marcus climbing out of the SUV. Well, I'll be damned. Monica. Marcus. I figured you two were goners when Detroit went dark. He grabbed them both in a hug that lifted Monica off her feet, then looked at the crowd of people spilling out of the vehicle. And you brought friends. Lots of friends. Monica made introductions quickly, explaining how they'd met Jake, picked up the others, fought their way here. Uncle Jack listened, nodding, assessing each person with sharp eyes that missed nothing. When she finished, he looked at Jake. You military, son? Jake nodded. Army, infantry, 2 deployments. Uncle Jack stuck out his hand. Jack Richardson, Army myself back in the day, Vietnam. Glad my niece had someone with training watching her back. You all look like you've been through hell and back. Pretty much, sir, Jake agreed, shaking the offered hand and feeling the strength still in the old man's grip. We're hoping you might have room for a few tired survivors. We can work, pull our weight, help with whatever needs doing. We're not looking for a handout. Uncle Jack laughed, a big booming sound. Son, it's the end of the world. We're past worrying about handouts. You made it here, you're alive, you're welcome. Come on, let's get you folks inside, fed, cleaned up. We can talk about the future once you're not looking like you're about to drop dead. The farm compound was even more impressive up close. Uncle Jack gave them a quick tour, showing off the solar panels that powered everything, the well with backup hand pumps, the root cellar packed with preserved food, the armory with enough weapons and ammunition to outfit a small militia, the medical supplies, the workshops with tools and spare parts. Been preparing for something like this for 30 years, he explained. Government collapse, nuclear war, supervirus, didn't much matter what caused it. Figured eventually something would knock civilization on its backside, and I'd rather be ready than sorry. He showed them to a bunkhouse that had been set up for exactly this scenario, multiple beds, clean linens, a working bathroom with running water heated by solar. You folks rest up, clean up, take your time. Dinner's at 6, and we eat proper around here, none of this canned soup nonsense. My wife Linda's cooking, and she don't skimp. He paused at the door. One rule though, everyone contributes. I don't care if you're 5 or 50, everyone works, everyone helps. We're a community now, and communities survive by everyone doing their part. We clear? Everyone nodded agreement, too grateful and exhausted to do anything else. That evening they gathered in the main farmhouse, meeting Uncle Jack's wife Linda, a warm woman in her 50s who hugged everyone like they were long-lost family, and their daughter Rachel with her husband Tom and their 2 kids, Caleb and Zoe, who'd arrived at the farm the day the outbreak started. Linda served a feast by apocalypse standards, roasted chicken from their own birds, vegetables from the garden, fresh bread, even apple pie for dessert. Sophie's eyes went wide at the sight of so much real food, and she dug in like she hadn't eaten in days, which wasn't far from the truth. After dinner, the adults sat around the big kitchen table while the kids played in the next room, actually playing like normal children, the sound of their laughter almost alien after everything they'd been through. Uncle Jack laid out the situation as he understood it. From what I've gathered on shortwave radio, this thing is global. Started somewhere in Asia, spread faster than anyone could react. Major cities went down first, then it spread outward. Government's gone at the federal level, military's scattered, some units still fighting but most collapsed. We're on our own out here. There are other survivor groups, Rachel added. She was maybe 30, tough-looking woman who clearly took after her father. We've had contact with a few over the radio. Some good people trying to rebuild, some not so good people taking advantage of the chaos. We've been lucky so far, remote enough that we haven't had trouble, but it's only a matter of time before someone notices we've got supplies and security. The implication was clear, they needed to be ready to defend what they had. Jake felt himself slipping into that role again, the soldier, the protector. We should set up a proper security rotation, train everyone on basic defense, maybe scout the surrounding area and make contact with friendly groups. Safety in numbers, and if we can establish a network of survivor communities, we're all better off. Uncle Jack grinned. I like the way you think, son. That's exactly what we need, someone with tactical experience to organize our defenses. How'd you feel about being head of security around here? Jake glanced at Monica, who smiled encouragingly, then at the others from their journey, all of them looking at him with trust and hope. How'd he gone from waking up alone in a Detroit apartment to being responsible for the security of a survivor community in less than 48 hours? But he knew the answer. The world had ended, and in the ruins, people grabbed onto anything that gave them a chance at survival. Skills, leadership, hope, community. These were the currencies that mattered now. I'd be honored, sir, Jake said, shaking Uncle Jack's hand again. Let's make this place the safest spot in Michigan. Around the table, people nodded, smiles breaking through the exhaustion and trauma. They'd made it, against all odds, through dust and determination, they'd found sanctuary. The journey wasn't over, not by a long shot. There would be more challenges, more dangers, more losses to come. But for tonight, in this farmhouse full of good people and the smell of apple pie, they could rest. They could hope. They could believe that maybe, just maybe, humanity had a future after all. As Jake lay in his bunk that night, listening to the quiet breathing of his companions, he thought about everything that had happened. Mrs. Patterson eating the mailman seemed like a lifetime ago, even though it had been less than 2 days. He'd gone from an unemployed veteran wondering how to pay rent to a leader in a post-apocalyptic community. Life changed fast, he'd learned that in the military, but this was something else entirely. The old world was gone, burned away in blood and chaos. What rose from the ashes would be different, built by people like those sleeping around him, survivors who'd refused to give up. Through the window he could see Uncle Jack making rounds, the old man taking his turn at watch, rifle over his shoulder, checking fences and locks. The farm was quiet, peaceful even, a little island of civilization in a sea of chaos. How long could they keep it that way? How long until the dead found them, or hostile survivors, or resources ran low? Jake didn't know, couldn't predict the future any better than he'd predicted zombies shambling through Detroit streets. But he knew one thing for certain: whatever came next, they'd face it together. He closed his eyes, let exhaustion finally claim him, and for the first time since the screaming woke him up yesterday morning, Jake Martinez slept without nightmares. There would be work to do tomorrow, defenses to build, people to train, a community to protect. But tomorrow could wait. Tonight, they'd earned rest. Tonight, they'd earned hope. Through dust and determination, through blood and fear and impossible choices, they'd survived. And survival, Jake was learning, was just another word for victory in this new world. The journey had brought them here, to this farm, to this family, to this chance at a future. And whatever the global zombie event threw at them next, they'd face it the same way they'd faced everything else, together, stubborn, refusing to quit. Because that's what survivors did. That's what Americans did. They got knocked down and got back up. They lost everything and built it again. They stared into the darkness and lit a candle out of pure spite. The world had ended, sure, but their story? Their story was just beginning.